Hi everybody, welcome back to Self-Care Sunday. This is week 8 of Self-Care Sunday, so thank you for joining me. I've got ticks today. They're popping, so I'm fine. Just happens. And as we continue this journey together, you might see more of them. I'm good. So last week we talked about courage, and it was a big week for courage. I feel like a lot of my life is demanding a lot of courage from me right now. So if you had a similar experience and want to share, love to hear about it. If not, I hope that you found something to work on this week that brought you, some clarity, some interest, whatever you need. So courage, we worked on that last week. I'm probably going to continue working on it, but I thought that I would just move on to the next one. The next virtue that we have for today is courtesy. So what is courtesy? Courtesy is to be polite and have good manners. It is to be considerate of others and to have gracious ways. It is a way of acting with people which makes them feel valued, cared for, and respected. Courtesy is something people use when they are trying to make a good impression. It is important to show courtesy with friends and relatives, not just people we are meeting for the first time. Please, thank you, excuse me, and you're welcome are not just words. They are courteous expressions which let people know that you appreciate them and care for their feelings. Being courteous by not interrupting someone while they are speaking tells them that what they are saying is just as important as what you have to say. Being polite to your parents, elders, and teachers is especially important. It shows them that you respect them. And then it goes on a little bit about why we practice courtesy and how we practice it. But I'm just going to move on because I think sometimes short and sweet is the best way to think about things. But if you want the full pages, as always, let me know. I can send them your way. Signs of success for courtesy are: you are practicing courtesy when you treat others as if you value and respect them. If you think about how your actions affect others, if you remember to treat elders, parents, and teachers politely, you eat, speak, and move graciously, and you make requests instead of demands. And you greet people with a smile. And then you may need some more practice, so keep trying when you treat others rudely or as if they don't matter, when you put yourself before others, when you forget to say please, thank you, hello, or other expressions of courtesy, and don't say anything when you meet new people, when you interrupt, when you push, shove, or act piggy when you eat. I would assume that's just not following table manners. I personally don't love that phrase. But yes, table manners in certain settings can be important because it can show the host or whoever cooked the food or the people around you that you respect them, and that you want to be in their presence. And then when you make demands instead of requests, or you answer the phone rudely. So the affirmation for courtesy is: I am courteous. I remember my manners and I treat people with respect. I greet others politely and I show people that I care. Yeah. So that's interesting. Courtesy. We'll do a little work on that this week. If you have any thoughts about courtesy or any experiences about courtesy, definitely let me know. I'd like to hear them. I think it's interesting with courtesy how much manners play into these kinds of things. Especially for people who are neurodivergent, sometimes they're not specifically taught. It's rather expected that you might already know these things, such as you should eat with your mouth closed. So for a lot of people, you can look around when you're growing up and you can see, oh, people eat with their mouth closed, or you might have a parent tell you once or something like that. But for people who are neurodivergent, that kind of stuff doesn't come super naturally all the time, depending on the individual. Some people are really good about like pattern recognition and just going with that, and other people need a little bit more specific help. And also younger children tend to need a little bit of help learning these ways of being courteous. And so if somebody right off the bat doesn't exactly seem courteous to you, it might not be that they disrespect you. It might just be that they have never learned this virtue. And I think that's an important to note about a lot of these virtues, is if you don't have one of these virtues as like something that you hold really important to yourself, or that you have a lot of experience learning and practicing, that's okay. You can always practice it if it's something that you find valuable, but you're never going to know if you find it valuable if you don't take the time to practice. So I don't know. I just think that's really interesting, because sometimes we can automatically say, "Oh, well, that person wasn't courteous to me, so why would I be courteous to them?" And the reality is that we don't often have a lot of these virtues modeled for us. Our family or friends might choose specific virtues that are similar to ours, that are very important, that are values. So then when these other virtues are important to other people and they're their values, we might not practice them, and they might see that as kind of like off-putting or offensive, but they could think the same thing about us. So I think it's really important that even if somebody isn't using a virtue towards you, that you do your best without letting yourself be kind of walked all over or disrespected, to use the virtues that you want to see, because it sets an example for somebody else so that they can learn how to use virtue. And if you're somebody who wants an example of somebody who's really good at a virtue, maybe try taking a look around your life a little bit, and like your friends and your coworkers and your neighbors, and just sort of notice who's really good at that. So I might look around and say, "Oh my gosh, my neighbor was so courteous. They always say hi when we're at the mailbox, and they always smile at me, and they always make me feel like my conversation is valued even when they're in a rush, you know?" And I might try to think about, okay, well, what are the specific things that they do that I find courteous that I want to use and I want to try. Yeah. So I think that right now, another thing about values and virtues that I have been finding really interesting over the last week is that I was thinking a lot about compliments. Because I had a dear friend give me the most lovely compliment, like maybe I've ever heard in my life this week. I was having a really hard day, and I was on the phone with two of my friends, and one of them just gave me such a lovely compliment, and I really feel seen when people compliment my values and my virtues. And I think that's really interesting, because it made me want to, like, hearing that made me want to just shrink into a little ball. And I went against that, and I used courage, and I said, "Thank you." And she goes, "That was really uncomfortable for you, wasn't it?" And I said, "Yes, it really was, but thank you. I'm trying to learn to accept that." And so I've been thinking about that a little bit. But as we continue to, like, explore these values and these virtues throughout the next however long this goes, if you're joining me, I think it's really interesting the difference between a compliment like, "Hey, I like your shoes," and, "Hey, I think you have a really great sense of style that you've developed." Because those are like the same compliment, but they're very different. Because one compliments an object that a person has and is also very nice to hear, but at some level is not about the person. And the compliment about the virtues or the values that we're using is really about that individual. And it's really empowering to hear that kind of stuff, because it's just different. It's about our soul and about the things that we've been working on, and about our heart and about our passions and our values. And it feels very different to have somebody compliment your personality and your experience in life and your choices and your way of being than it does have somebody compliment something about you that you either can't control or you can control, but it's not really about you, like your shoes or your hair. Like, I was born with blonde hair. If I had blue hair and somebody said, hey, I really love the color you picked, you made a really good job deciding that, like, do you see how that's a little bit different than I like your blue hair? Which either one is a great step. I think people don't compliment each other enough, and that's part of the reason that we're so uncomfortable with compliments, is because we're used to hearing criticisms about ourselves from our own brain, and then it's easy to discount compliments that other people give us because they're not as common as they should be. So when you're thinking about being courteous this week, if you want to, maybe just think about people in your life and the values that they hold, and just try giving them a little bit of a compliment about their values that you see that they're using in the world. It's really a pleasant experience for everybody. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, but overall it's pleasant. Yeah, so that was the virtue of the week, and I went on a little bit of tangent. I don't know where that came from. To be honest with you guys, I had somebody ask me this week also where I come up with this stuff, and the answer is I don't know. I don't always plan these beforehand. It sort of just happens, and you're along for the ride. This I decided to do in the moment, and the activity that we're about to move into, I decided approximately 5 minutes before I got here. The activity of this week is I had 2 different things I wanted to talk about. Okay, what did I write? Oh, 2 things. One is finding your inner kid, and the second one is books as a form of self-care. So when I talk about finding your inner kid, this is something that I've been doing for several months now, and I would like to continue. If you ever get to a place in your life where you're like, man, I don't even know what I like. I don't know what I want. I don't know who I am. I've been there. I kind of am there. But one of the things that I've been looking at and thinking about is, what are the things that I was deeply passionate about as a kid, like a really young kid? What are things that I really enjoyed? And that as I got older, either I just stopped doing for some reason, or I haven't had access to, or whatever. And I was thinking about, like, books and how much I just loved kids' books. And as I grew into an adult, it became harder to find books that I felt connected with and that I enjoyed, because they often are full of heavy topics that are not really presented in an accessible way for me for some reason. And it could be just that I'm not finding the right ones. But that's really interesting. So I was like, maybe I should read some kids' books. And I went back and I reread series that I felt as a kid, like that I felt that I loved as a kid. And it was really calming and nice, because it really just was me in my bed with my kids' books. And they are actually so in-depth and have so many topics that are important to think about, that are presented in a very clear and unique way. And also they have pictures, which, if you're a visual person like me, having pictures just makes everything better. So I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. I'm gonna go back to the things that I like to do as a kid. So when you're thinking about, like, okay, what do I like, it might be worth it to try some of the things that you liked when you were a kid. So if you really loved bouncing on your trampoline, go on your trampoline for a little bit. Go take a trampoline class if you don't have one. You could also have things like, you really loved to bake as a kid, and then you got older and you realized that, oh, my cooking isn't as good as other people's, so then you kind of stopped. That's like a really big theme for me. I feel like as I got older, I realized that other people were better at things than I was. And so I just kind of stopped. Not because I didn't like doing the thing, but because I felt like if other people were better at it, then they deserved to do it more than I did, which is a thought that I'm learning to challenge. So do things that you're bad at and do things that are fun. Um, Maybe you loved turning over rocks and looking at bugs. Why aren't you doing that? You're a person and you have free will. Like, I think that's another really interesting thing is like, we really do have free will. If you want to bake a cake and make duck frosting on it, like just like pipe little ducks all over it, you can do that on a random Tuesday night. So it might be worth giving a try to some of those activities that you did when you were a little kid. They can be really heartwarming and really healing, even if you're not necessarily good at them. That's not the point. So that's my little spiel on activities that you did when you were a kid. Go back to those, enjoy them. They're awesome, and it does heal your like inner self. Moving on to books, which I kind of accidentally sort of got into that spiel. I was reading quite a few books from the adult section of the library. Go check out books from your local library. They need your support now that more than ever. Library's amazing. Get a library card. If you need help, text me. I went to the library. I got a whole bunch of adult books, and I started reading them, and I got them on a specific topic, and I felt very overwhelmed by the amount of dense information that I didn't really feel like I could do anything with it, because even though it was good information, it just didn't really feel applicable or interesting. And a lot of it didn't feel like it was about me in specific, like what I needed out of the book. And I was searching this adult section of the library, and I just couldn't figure it out. And then I realized that there's a whole teen section, because for the information I was looking for, the kids section probably wouldn't have been applicable either. So I went to the teen section, and there is so much good stuff in the teen section. Like, it's crazy how good the books are in the teen section, how just easy they are to read, how much applicable information they have. I think because a lot of teens are like really just trying to get the info that they need quickly, and they're also learning more and more about themselves, so they flick through that information a lot faster. But the books that I found were just so engaging and so applicable and so interesting, and they just felt like the level that I needed them to be at. Not that I can't read the adult books, but it was just like, personally I feel like I'm going through a phase of growth and transformation, and what's a better place to go than the teen section, where everybody's going through like major growth and transformation of their personalities and themselves, because it's aimed at that time of life. So check out the teen section. On to specific book recommendations. Types of books that you can use for self-care. We've got coloring books. This is from a local artist. It's called Foxy and Friends, and it's really cute. I haven't started coloring it yet, but it's got like these really cute little critters in it. And I found this at an art fair, so support your local artists. Some of them do have coloring books, in fact, and this one's actually like, what do they call them? Graphic novel situation? Graphic novel coloring book. I just think that's the coolest thing ever. So you can find things like this if you're looking for something that's more of a story that takes you with it. There's also just standard coloring books that have a lot of different themes that are super fun, because you don't have to make a lot of decisions, just like what colors you're using. I got this one on Etsy. Etsy's another really great place to find coloring books that are appropriate to what you're going through. This specific one is by Dandy Doodles. I don't know if it's still up, but this one I thought was, a lot of these pages are not children appropriate. I don't think I have any children on my page anyway. Here, this one is a little bit, yeah, we'll do this one. Representation changes lives. I just think that's really cute. Forget it. I'm gonna show this page because I like it. This one specifically is about chronic illness, and it's from an artist who has a disability or a chronic illness. I'm not entirely sure. Stop telling me to do yoga. So sometimes it can be really healing to get coloring books that have swear words in them for adults. Yeah, some of these pages are more appropriate than others. But it's cool that there's different representation for, individuals with disabilities. So if you find a coloring book that kind of matches with what you like or what you are going through, there's a lot of really great body positivity ones also, that have, different sized people in the coloring book. Those are really fun. Then there's more specifically targeted books for self-care. I have not personally done this one yet, but I'm very excited to. There's a lot of really good stuff by Louise Hay. This one's called Love Yourself, Heal Your Life Workbook. I'm reading the book that's going along with it right now as well, called You Can Heal Your Life. Louise Hay has a lot of really good stuff about, it sounds really cheesy, but what it means to love yourself and how that can kind of heal your relationship with yourself, because a lot of people don't have a very good relationship with themselves. And I think that we can all get better at that. This one is called the Intuitive Eating Workbook. I've worked through portions of it. I will go back to it at some point. I will admit that it's probably going to be very helpful for people who have experienced a lot of issues with diet culture in their past experiences. I personally am very thankful that my parents modeled very good eating habits, and I was never forced to sit at the table and finish my plate or anything like that, and I think that really helped me to intuitively eat as I got older. But I still do have my own personal things with it, which I won't go into detail of. But this is a really great book. It's not going to be any specific diet. It's more about listening to your body and its cues. I think we're all a little bit disconnected to our bodies on some level. Some people are better at being connected than others. This can help you with that if that's of interest. I've heard really good things from several friends as well. 2 books left. Art. There's a lot of really cool books at the library. Go to your library. 250 Brief Creative and Practical Art Therapy Techniques. There's a lot of self-help books that are very cognitive and about the way that you think. Sometimes that feels very overwhelming. Doing things like this book, we did some of these in a previous session, can be really a good way to kind of start that journey without feeling overwhelmed and like you have to change everything all at once and judging yourself for where you're at. It's okay to notice where you're at, but I think we all judge ourselves too harshly. So starting with something that you have to do instead of something that you have to judge or notice can be a helpful way to approach it. Yeah, I'll probably do more of these. I'll probably do more of these exercises with you guys because I really like them. The final one, which I need to start again. I started this one during COVID and I did not follow through. Oops, don't have an excuse. But this is the Artist's Way workbook. If you are somebody who is into the arts specifically, this is really, really, really awesome. If you are not, honestly, I think it's still a good resource. You could probably use it for other areas of life. It guides you through several weeks. I don't know exactly how many It might be several months actually. And it gives you tasks. So, like, one of the things is every week you have to take yourself on a date alone. And they call it an artist's date. So, it's literally just some time where you spend that time alone doing something that you enjoy. So, you could, I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be alone, but it's kind of helpful if it is. So, for example, you could go to the art gallery alone, or you could take a walk, take a hike, you could, do whatever you want to do. You could go to a pottery class, you could, whatever you need to do to take that time and set aside that time specifically for your action of self-care. Another thing it has you do is some journaling. So every morning when you wake up, it has you journal a couple of pages, and it walks you through several steps, kind of helping you come back into your creative expression and owning who you are and where you're at. Yeah. So those are the book recommendations that I have. I need to be utilizing some of those more, so this is going to keep me accountable to do that. I'm trying to think if I forgot anything. If you have any other book recommendations or things that you did as a kid that you think other people might relate to, put them in the comments. We all love to hear that. I think that's it. I feel like there was one other thing that I was going to say that I'm forgetting, but it can't have been that important. So either I'll leave it in the comments or I'll tell you guys next week. Yeah. I hope that you all have a really good night. And as always, I love you all. I am here for you. And I'll see you next week. So, goodbye. Have a good night.